Namaste. Welcome to another session of Khoj Gurbani. This is Ravinder Singh joining you from Columbus, trying to facilitate the session. And we will be continuing with our series on Naam. And today we are in for a great lecture by concur Khoj, and we will follow that with a question and answer. I had wanted to actually touch on a few points from the last session, but I will wait until Ekunkarji is finished. So with that, it's all yours.
Okay. So why did you call so? I'm going to do my best. You guys tell me if you have trouble seeing what's on the whiteboard, because there's lots to talk about. But I wanted to start by saying that the things I'm going to be sharing tonight are things I've been thinking about for about 30 years. So my interest in spirituality and language goes back to when I was 14, 15, when I studied in college, studied language theory and Chinese, and, Buddhist philosophy and Asian studies and English literature. And so all of these things have been in my psyche actually for years before I ever even knew what a Sikh was, much less became a Sikh. I also am super aware of the fact that it's always a little dicey for me to dive into these waters because, you know, I'm this like brash girl from South Jersey. You know, like I bring my history and background to it, and I know that sometimes that's entertaining and fun, and sometimes it can be annoying, and so I'm just really aware of that. So I'm going to share this lecture with you, and it's my honest journey, and I hope it's useful for the conversation. So we're talking about Naam. And actually, I wanted to start by talking about language in general. You know, when we talk about Naam, the normal definition is the names of God, right? But it's important to note that in English, there's just not a whole lot of names for God. Like you've got God, you have Lord, you know, Creator, the divine. If someone could come up with a dozen names for God in English, I would like buy them dinner. You know, it's just a pretty small linguistic box. And one of the things about language, one of the things that's really important about language, can you all see what I'm writing okay?
Yes.
One of the things that it's important about language is that words actually show you what's important to a culture. And the more words there are, the more important that concept is, because what language does is it defines, differentiates, and delineates perception, right? So one of my favorite examples of this is that the word, that in English we have one word for snow, and that's snow. I don't even know, is there a word for snow in Hindi or Punjabi? Okay, that was a question, but okay. But the Eskimos have...
Yes. For ice. We're on mute, so it takes a little while for us to react.
Oh, okay, all right. So there's a word for ice.
Yeah, but it's not snow. Ice is not snow.
Right.
Yeah. But so, we refer to it as baraf, or which is used for even snow.
So there's one word, and you use it for ice, and you use it for snow both.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So to me, that says ice and snow are not the most common things, because there's just one word. You use it for both things.
Yeah.
But in the Eskimo language, there's 100 names for snow. Oops, here we go. Here's the list. I printed it out. And it's really important. Like, I want to take the time to do this because it says something really powerful about language. So I'm just going to start writing some of these names for snow. Jutla. Jutla is the snow between your fingers and toes. Krotla. Krotla is the name of the kind of snow that blinds you. This is a beautiful word here. Kripriana. And that means the snow that looks blue in the early morning. Really beautiful, really poetic. Muxtla, I think is how you say that. The snow that hides the entire village. And this is a really powerful one, Tlayopi, which means the snow drifts that you fall into and die. And, you know, one more. Kritaya is the snow when it mixes with your breath. So you can see in English, you know, we have snow. But you can see in Inuit, you've got these amazing words that are intimately related with my experience of the snow. The snow between my fingers and toes. It's a really fun, you know, image. The snow that you fall into and die is a word of warning. You know, the snow that looks blue in the early morning is like mystical and beautiful and poetic. And all of them, if you were going to translate them flatly into English, you just say snow, and you would completely lose the entire perception of the culture that created this lexicon. Okay? So, I need my eraser here. So this becomes a really critical, important issue when we're talking about Gurbani. All right, my notes. Okay. Because when we're born, the mind, there's very little we know. And there's a lot that we can't know. And this is the realm of the unknown. There's the realm of the known and the realm of the unknown. And the realm of the known, we name clearly things like a mango tree or an elephant. And everybody can point to it and agree that something's there. You know, the word blue, you have the, you know, Nila, you've got the word blue in every language because blue is a ubiquitous known perception. Everybody's mind, unless you're colorblind, so most people's mind can perceive blue or perceive an elephant or perceive an apple tree or a mango tree. But most of our life is in the unknown, you know? And the problem is the mind doesn't know what to do with this. And so we have to create names for it in order to have a relationship with it. If we didn't try to name the unknown, it would become overwhelming chaos, right? So the parts of my life that are known, I have very clear names for. And the part of life that's unknown, well, when am I going to die? What happens after I die? Where did I come from before I was born? Who made the sun? What is this planet anyway? Like all of those questions, the mind needs at least something to hold on to not go crazy. So we have to name the known and the unknown, and the mind has to have a relationship with the known and the unknown. And what that relationship is gives rise to what we call religious identities. you know, Christian, atheist, Buddhist, all, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of this really says, well, we're all living in the same known world, but we're all defining this unknown in very different ways. And again, if you want to get into it, we can talk about values and, all right. So if we don't name the unknown, it's chaos, it's untamed, it's threatening. We have to name it. Even people who say, I don't believe in a God, have named the unknown. No God. They've named it. It's known to them. Whether they're right or not, who knows? But they have to have that relationship. All right. So here's what happens when we get into Gurbani. Gurbani is a language that has many, many, many different names for the divine. You know, we've got, these are just a few, right? Thakur, we have Prab, we've got Ram, whoops, Ram. We have Ram, we have Govind, we've got Had, Parbrahm, and then Gudrit, which is kind of one of the, you know, it's a feminine word for the divine in Gurbani. And, you know, on and on, on and on. I mean, I'm sure you all know way more than I do names that are missing here. And the problem in translation is that you've got this lexicon getting mapped into this flat world of God, Lord, Lord God, God, Lord, Lord God, God's name, Lord, la, and that's why people go, wow, this sounds like the Bible when I read it. Yeah, because you've lost whatever this is. So, you know, when we look at language, when something has importance, it's about, you know, the names, like how many different names. So we need to understand, like I would propose, right, that we need to look at these names of God the way we look at the words for snow in Inuit, which is that the Guru's actually mapping something, that each of these names are differentiating and defining an aspect of that unknown in order for us to perceive and understand it. Hello? Okay. So Ram, for instance, right? Everyone gets in a tizzy about Ram because it's a Hindu name, whatever. If you break Ram down, it's Rama. It's sun and moon. And what this is saying is there's something that created the polarity of sun and moon, which is also masculine and feminine. So if you get out of the ritualistic ideas of what Ram means and you get into why is this in Gurbani and what is the perception I'm trying to achieve by chanting Ram? Oh, there's a sun and a moon. There's a male and a female. They're separate, but they dance together. That dance makes creation. Can I see that? Can I perceive it? Parbrahm, right? This isn't just Brahm. This is like, wow, the most huge creator, you know? Parbrahm is like, not just the one who created the world, but it's like, when we look through that Hubble telescope and we go back into the origin of time, and there's a consciousness that was orchestrating all these things that had to happen before our little earth could even exist, much less me exist right now. Whew, that's part of Brahm. That's like, wow, out there. So, Govind, right? Go means world, earth. Okay, so Govind is specifically talking about this place right here, the earth, the world. There's something that's watching out for the world. There's some conscious, there's some part of the unknown that's actually that cares about this little tiny rock floating around the sun. Well, that's Govind. So you have these, this lexicon. And so what I would offer is that there are two aspects to the technology of Nam Japo. And one is that we sing and recite these names so that we can learn to see it, right? All of us just, right, snow is snow. But if we took the time to memorize this list and learn all the Inuit names for snow, snow that never reaches the ground, snow sparkling with flashlights or headlights, the first snow of the year, the last snow of the year. If we were to memorize that lexicon and recite it to ourselves till we knew it by heart, we would no longer see snow in the same way. We would say, oh, that's that kind of snow, or that's that kind of snow. Oh, look at that snow. Oh, wow, that's that snow. And so when we chant these names of the divine, what it's basically doing is, if we're willing to enter into this as a lexicon of differentiation of what the unknown is, Guru Nanak saying, here's all the aspects of the unknown, I'm laying them out for you, the Gurus are. Then by chanting the Nam, we're developing the perception to say, oh, that's Kudrat, or that's Parabram, or oh, Govind, or Ram. And Balaram Jio is like almost like an invocation in the Laban. Why? Why do we say Balaram Jio? Because we're calling on that power, the strength of the union of the sun and the moon, the strength of the union of the masculine and feminine. So this is the first part of Nam, is we chant these names so that we can come to perceive the unknown actually in very specific ways. All right, now we're gonna shift. All right. Okay, the second aspect of Nam, and this is where I'm gonna get a little more esoteric. I actually think that Guru Nanak is restating one of the oldest and most ubiquitous truths. So I'm gonna get into the more mystical aspect of Nam, because we recite the names of God to open up a mystical experience of Nam. And what is that mystical experience? Well, let me go here. So before I studied Gurbani, years ago in my youth, I studied Chinese, and I spent a year in China. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Tao Te Ching, the Lao Tzu, it's one of the oldest spiritual texts that we know. And it's from Chinese literature. And these are the opening lines of the Tao Te Ching. Okay, so, oops, hold on. Yeah, we're good. Okay, so these are the opening lines of the Tao Te Ching. Dao ke dao, fei chang dao, ming ke ming, fei chang ming. And what this means is, translating it into English, it's a really compact line. The Tao, the way, the path. Ke dao, the path that you can recognize, that you can define, that you can see, the path that's evident to itself. Fei chang dao is not the real path. Ming, and Ming means name, identity, person, place, or thing. Ming means Naam, name, noun. Ming, Ke Ming, Fei Chang Ming, the name that you can speak, the name that you can name, the name that you can communicate, the name that you can articulate. Fei Chang Ming is not the real name. And so when we get into what that mystical realm of Naam is, I don't believe that Guru Nanak was seeing something new. I actually think he was trying to bring humanity back to one of the oldest, most primal mystical realities, which is that the real path, you can't see it. And the real identity, you can't define it. And that real identity, you can't know mentally. And this is the key. The mind needs to define things, but you never get experience through definition. And so T.S. Eliot's poem, The Naming of Cats, is probably one of my favorite poems for talking about the mystical experience of Naam. And I'm just going to try, I'll read it a little fast because I know I'm like being a little bit of a ham here, but I love this poem. The naming of cats is a difficult matter. It isn't just one of your holiday games. You may think at first I'm as mad as a hatter when I tell you a cat must have 3 different names. First of all, there's the name that the family uses daily, such as Peter, Augustus, Alonzo, or James, such as Victor or Jonathan, George or Bill Bailey, all of them sensible, everyday names. There are fancier names if you think they sound sweeter, some for the gentlemen, some for the dames, such as Plato, Admetus, Electra, Demeter, but all of them sensible, everyday names. But I can tell you, a cat needs a name that's particular, a name that's peculiar and more dignified. Else, how can he keep up his tail perpendicular, or spread out his whiskers, or cherish his pride? Of names of this kind, I can give you a quorum, such as Monkstrup, Quaxco, or Coracoput, such as Bombolurina, or else Jellylurium. Anyway, yeah, it's Eliot. Names that never belong to more than one cat. So those are the 2 kinds of names. But above and beyond, there's still one name left over. And that is the name you never will guess. The name that no human research can discover, but the cat himself knows and will never confess. When you notice a cat in profound meditation, the reason I tell you is always the same. His mind is engaged in rapt contemplation of the thought of the thought of the thought of his name. The ineffable, effable, effin ineffable, deep and inscrutable, singular name. Yes, this relates to Gurbani. We can name Prab, Parabram, we can name all these names, but we can't know God that way. And Guru Nanak's really clear in Japji about this. You can write everything you perceive and you're never going to get to the end of it, because the thing we're trying to define is unending and unknowable. I mean, he says it straight out. You can't know it. It never ends. No matter how much you try and categorize it, you're never going to find the definition of it. But what you can do is find an experience within yourself that is the tiny little bit of the divine in you that's authentic and beyond linguistic naming. And this is where we get to the map, part of the map, or part of the universe, where, you know, we talk about what's inside. We talk about the heart. So I hope I don't misspell this here, but we talk about the heart. We talk about that there is something inside of us that the mind can know. I can't know God out there, no matter how many names I chant and come up with, but I can experience the divine in here. And it's not a linguistic experience, right? So when we read, like when I read a Makalah, you'll read these stories about the Sikhs would come up to the gurus and beg for the gift of the Naam. Well, what were they asking for? They were saying, Guru, show me my Naam, my real identity, my authentic divine identity, so my mind can know God that way. And the beauty is that if the mind identifies with itself, we call that a manuk. You think I'm spelling this correctly, right? But when the mind takes a journey and goes into Gurmukh, it actually finds the thing it's looking for inside of itself. So it's almost like we have to chant all these super huge names of God to create the landscape to navigate till I find the only God I can experience, which is right here. Now, I approach Gurbani as a mystic and a poet. I'm a linguist because, you know, I'm interested in languages, but fundamentally, I understand Guru Nanak as a poetic mystic. And one of the things that I see in Gurbani over and over, and we don't ever do it, but it says over and over again, Jap Hud Hud, right? So I don't want to go into a linguistic meaning of Hud. I want to go into a poetic experience of Hud. So if you just chant Hud, 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 well, you could say that that is the sound of your heartbeat. If you were going to listen to your own heart beating and express it linguistically, Hud, 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 Hud. So the Guru's saying, chant Hud, because what you can know, you can't know what happens after you die really, or before you were born, or what's happening on the other side of the galaxy. But you can know that you're alive in this moment, and something beyond your concept and control is making your own heart beat. And you can't stop it, and you can't make it keep going when it stops. Do you notice, oh my mind, your own heart beating? Can you find the Naam, the divine identity, in your own heartbeat? And to me, that's what Hada Hada Naam really means. When you get right down to it, God is in your heartbeat, and you can know that. And if you chant and meditate on that, it's going to open up a whole new world. Now, the last little part of this. We can't really get to this until the mind's wandered everywhere else, right? That's why there's Thakur and Prab and Paraparam and blah, blah, blah. The mind goes everywhere. I'm chanting Govind, I'm chanting Dharam, I'm chanting, and then slowly it's like, oh, wait, I'm chanting my own heartbeat. I'm chanting the divine within me. And this is the path of learning. This is the path of seeking. We seek out there the thing that's actually in here. And everybody goes through it. It's about human spiritual maturity. But once you find that Naam inside of yourself, in your own heartbeat, then you see it everywhere. Oh, it's in the dog. It's in the tree. It's in my neighbor. It's in the guy in jail. It's in the homeless person on the street. It's in the guy who's in the White House. Everybody's heart is beating, and God is causing everybody's heart to beat. When you see it in yourself and then see it in others, this is why I don't think that Guru Nanak was against anybody. He wasn't against Muslims or Hindus or yogis. He recognized that these were names that were limited, right? If we're only going to see each other as Hindu, Muslim, yogi, caste, male, female, we're going to miss the true identity. We're going to miss the Hadanam. And what Guru Nanak gave us was a path of spiritual maturity, that you can be Muslim or Hindu or a yogi, but this is the consciousness to be. And in that, it creates a possibility that people can transcend their territorial identity. Because when we look at that back at the first whiteboard I did, right? The Christian, the Buddhist, the atheist, they're just defining the unknown in different ways. And then they fight with each other about it. Like, how stupid is that? Why are you fighting over how you're defining what can't ever be known? But if we all know that we're human, and we all know that there's a power that none of us can explain keeping all of our hearts beating, it creates that transcended space in Japji of I Panti Sagalajamati Manji Tejagaji, that I can be Hindu, I can be Muslim, I can be Buddhist, I can be all of it or none of it, or Sikh or whatever, but our common humanity is our highest bond, not the way my mind has defined the unknown. So what Guru Nanak does is give us profound definition of the unknown to lead us to our own heart. And then once we find that reality in our own heart, we see it in every heart, and then we experience the divine in a way that transcends definition. So that is my lecture today, whiteboard lecture from Plano, Texas, for all of you on the concept of Naam, which I have been working on since I studied this in China in 1989. Sanam, and thank you.
Thank you very much. It's funny that you should bring up Lao Tzu, because I have a translation sitting right here on my desk that I've been going through again, and like you've been dabbling with this. But you've covered a lot of ground, and we have a larger than usual crowd today. I guess it's a tribute to your presence here, delivering the lecture. So I don't want to. I will keep my questions aside for now and make the first round quickly. So my request to everyone is to keep your questions short, to the point. If you don't have anything new to add, I mean, please just don't regurgitate what has been said. We need to be very conscious of time. So let me begin.
I am sorry if I went too long.
No, so. You didn't, but it's just that we have more people than usual. We have like 10 or 11 people, okay, as opposed to the usual 5 or 6 or 4, whatever. So let me start with Chetandeep. Chetandeep, I'm not putting you on the spot here, but I think we can lead off with you.
Hanji Devji, thank you, Ekangarji. Thank you. A lot of information, a lot of new things for me to learn. But in my mind, I'm a little conflicted about few things. So I'm not sure if I should go on or just skip today. But since I said that, so the things that I'm conflicted about are, like you gave an example of snow and 100 names of snow. So that is something that is tangible. Snow is something that is tangible, we can see. So when a child is born, right, it doesn't, unless the child is told that this is snow, or this is mango tree, or this is apple tree, he has no notion of concepts or anything about snow. So we introduce that child to snow, and eventually that's something we can see, we can touch, we can feel, and hence the 100 names of snow make us more, as you said, right, make us much more acquainted with snow and let us enjoy that snow in 100 different ways. But I'm not sure if the same analogy works in the realm of unknown, as you said yourself. Because, for example, let's say I've never tasted honey in my life. I have no idea what honey is. And I can read scriptures and scriptures about this is how honey looks like, this is how its viscosity is, this is how the taste is. I can go on reading thousands of names and everything. But I'm not sure if I will, by doing that, I will ever know what real honey is, unless I know or experience or access it. So I'm not sure if that analogy really translates to the realm of unknown. That's all I wanted to share.
Okay.
So I think, Chetandeep, if I'm not mistaken, that was the point that was being made, that this does not translate into the realm of the unknown. I mean, the whole idea is to transcend the sort of linguistic structure that we have that we use, and this is something. But in any case, let me move on. We'll come back to this hopefully. Ripudaman, do you have a question or an observation?
Or maybe observation or comment on the question I was just asked, that Chetandeep, it is a pointer to a direction, right? It's kind of rather than a complete answer. So think of it that way. So like the concept of a limit in math, think of it that way, right? So you can never know it, but it's a pointer in that direction.
Yeah.
No.
Do you want to respond, Chetandeep?
Exactly. So the thing is, like, I think Guru Sahib and Bhagats, whoever wrote Bani, they knew it. They experienced it, and hence they were able to come up with 100 different ways and names of expressing that, right? So they knew that experience intimately. And the reason I brought this whole thing up is because, as Ekankar said, there are two technologies. So I'm not sure if this technology, like an analogy of like taking 100 different names, actually works in the realm of unknown.
Well, I think what I would offer, just to clarify, is that they did experience it and they recorded their experiences. By repeating what they said and repeating these names, we open ourselves up to the possibility of receiving that experience, right? But you've got to prime the mind. Like, you have to do something to give the mind the structure to receive that experience.
Right. Exactly as Ravinder said in the last time, this is like a scaffolding or a support structure that we are building, which is not itself Naam Japna, but it can lead to an experience of Naam Japna.
Right. So there's like the Naam Japna, I'm chanting Govind or Ram or Had, and it's building a structure in the mind of perception. And then through Guru's grace, I have the opportunity, when the Guru blesses me with grace or prasad, then that structure gets filled with experience and knowing.
But I think we should also be clear about, like,
okay, Chetandeep, we have to sort of move on to other people as well. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but let's give the others a chance here. But before I do that, let me be a little selfish and ask a quick question, because we're on this subject. My question is an extension of Chetandeep's. I mean, you talk about technologies and you have only touched on chanting of names. My question to you is chanting the only technology? Couldn't somebody come to the same conclusion without having to chant these names? I mean, through sheer reflection and contemplation, or even doing kirtan, where you are engaged in some sort of linguistic structure, but it primes your mind. So the question is chanting the only way to prime your mind?
Well, I mean, kirtan and chanting to me are in the same family, right? They're not.
Okay, I'm just taking this as, no, because you went through this exercise of repeating a word over and again. I'm pointing to that specifically.
Right, well, so the only thing I would offer is, my understanding from Gurbani is that there's only one command, and it's in the Mul Mantra, and it's jap. Now that doesn't.
People have different takes on what jap might mean.
I get it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that jap is just a name. When I teach about jap, what I say is, have you ever been in love? And can you stop thinking about the person you're in love with? No, you're constantly repeating, the image, the name.
Yeah, but to that point, Bani also talks about vichar, right?
Right, but what is vichar?
So, as being equally important. In fact, it tells us that mere chanting isn't going to get you there. Ram Ram sabko kahe, kya Ram na hoye. So I'm just trying to ascertain if this path is probably not so narrowly defined. Perhaps there are as many ways of priming your mind as there are people. I'm just curious.
I mean, so I would, at the risk of, I could change my mind on this. But what I would say is
so could I.
Jap is the technology, whether it's a name or a shabad. And then after you're repeating something long enough, the mind goes, wait, what am I talking about? What am I saying this over and over? And it has to investigate what it means. And that's the structure building, right? First, I'm just hearing it, you know, Vasamere Pyarya, Vasamere Govinda. Okay, I'm just repeating it. Then the mind goes, what? What does that mean? And then the mind investigates what it means. And the combination of the jap and the investigation, the jap and the vichar creates the structure. And then from the structure, you get into states of dhyan or simran or, you know, I think that there's a very sophisticated science of the mind behind all of this. And again, English is just a flat language. And so we haven't really gotten, this is why I keep going back to the map. So I don't think we're saying different things. I think it's the journey. And jap is the first part of the journey, because that's what Guru Nanak did. He walked for decades and he sang and got people to sing with him. And they kept repeating it. And then we're like, wait, what does this mean? And then I get more educated. And then I open up. And then I have experiences of deeper states and all these other things. But I have to start with following what's written and saying it before all these other things can unfold. I do believe that, honestly, yes.
No, I certainly respect that, but I'm just of the, so I will not take too much time here. Let me move on. We can talk about this in Dallas. Yeah. Preet Singh, do you want to ask Ekankar anything or make an observation?
I'm good, Virji. Okay. Thank you, Ekankar ji, for a very enlightening presentation.
Okay, thank you. Gurdeep ji from Montreal.
Yeah, it was very informative. I'm quite convinced with Ekankar Kaur. She talked about a heartbeat, her. At the same time, I can say with the breath taking, Wahe Guru, Wahe Guru. It also works the same way, same fashion as the heart works with the heartbeat. So once your breath starts enunciating the same thing, and once you, like a baby, you don't know in the beginning what it means. Once you know the attributes behind it, what was the karmic name, there was certain action were done on this earth, then this similar name was given, Gopal, Govind, Hare, Ram, Krishna. All these has certain significance behind it. These are all is dedicated to the same supreme power, God or whatever. I think give me more sense. Either we know first the words, and then we know that behind it, what was the whole spectrum which keeps you busy. The same thing as you're in love with someone. You don't know the person only, but you don't know her name or his name. But you can be still in love. But once you have a name for her or him, you can start enjoying more. The moment that word comes in your mouth, you will become very tasteful inside. Because now you know the person properly. So you enjoy his name. Anybody who doesn't know to whom you are talking about, one person, mother start crying when she hears the name of his son. But the other neighbors, they say, what's wrong with her? And somebody said the name she's chatting is his own son who used to live with him, but not anymore, or he's not living on this earth anymore. So it makes a difference to everybody how he's going to take it. I think mantra is important too. To know Gurbani, to know all the different names is important as long as we not start fighting among each other with the names. Thank you. This is what I can conceive.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a member here. Pardon me if I catch the name. Gurvinder Singh from Oshawa is what I see on my screen. If you are on and listening and wish to interject with a thought, question, opinion, please do so.
Yeah, I think that was challenging. He got disconnected. Yeah.
He got disconnected. Okay. Gurjeet Singh Virji in Australia. I see that you're on now. Or are you?
Hanji Virji.
You heard the wonderful lecture. It's to you now if you have any thoughts or questions.
Yeah, I just joined at about 11:20. But it's a nice arrangement, and I must thank Ekankar ji to put everything together, because it takes time and effort to deliver a lecture like that. I will just ask, as you have asked one question, on a similar grounds, that I'll read a simple there is a restriction, a lot of restrictions in Gurbani on chanting. And jap's meaning, I don't know how it went to chanting. And then when the Kirtan Naams are said, and also the Naams, 1,000 Naams given by Dasam Pasha in Jap, the Vaheguru is not a Naam in there. It means Vaheguru is out of the list of those. Vaheguru is actually a composite word. The actual pronunciation is Vaheguru, but anyhow, in Sukhmani Sahib, we have been told, and I'll read an English translation as well. It says, Kahu bolna pahunchat prani, agam agochar prabh nirbani. And the simplest of the explanation says, through no speech can mortal reach the master. The Lord is inaccessible, incomprehensible, and immaculate. So when we have things like, they are the hurdles, they are the checkpoints, that are we going in the right direction? So how will we be overlooking things like that? Through no speech can a mortal reach the master. So how will you overcome these things if you say chanting is a way to meet the master? Thank you.
Well, you know, I'm going to keep coming back to this notion that it's a progression, right? And there's a lot of brain research happening today talking about what happens when you speak positively, and that one negative word can start to degrade your brain, and that speaking positively actually does amazing things for the frontal lobe and the gray matter of the brain. And so I think it's like building your muscles, you know, like if I'm going to do martial arts, I'm going to start off flailing all over the place, but the master can just like move one little way and, you know, it happens. And I think it's the same process that we do chant. There is kirtan. I mean, Guru Arjan, you know, the gurus, they sang and they said, Gave, Suniya, Manarakia Bao. I mean, it's like you sing. And it creates changes in the brain, like science is proving this now. And once those changes take place, you do then have access to that more subtle, more silent, more inner, the anahad. You know, it's like the anahad exists, and when you experience it, okay, and it's the vibration without sound. But you can't get to the subtle until you've got like your brain built in a good way to experience it. So I think that the arguments we get into is that we want to say it's one or the other instead of recognizing that it's a journey and a process of spiritual maturity. And how is that laid out and how is that described?
Thank you. If I may, Ekonkarji, interject here, just playing devil's advocate. Playing both sides, actually. So I think there are many passages in Gurbani that actually invoke the rasana, which is tongue, okay? And it actually enjoins you in many, many, many places. Unless you twist the meaning out of context, it's very clear that it is the rasana that is being asked to repeat the names. So I'm just coming to the point that you're making here, that it is perhaps a progression. And I say perhaps just as a word of caution. So, because, you know, I could change my mind again. But no, I think, if I may, what I'm sensing from you is, and I might add to that, is that you have to start with the physical somewhere to get to the subtle, right? And that is the spectrum. My point was that we also have to look at people's differing temperaments. Not everybody can sit down and do the sort of chanting that you gave us an example of. They could be chanting through vichar in a very different way, or through kirtan, right? Getting to the same from the gross to the subtle. But to your point, there are many passages that suggests japana, that suggests doing kirtan. So what I'm trying to drive at is that this is a multi-dimensional path, and different people might take on different aspects of that path with different emphasis. Some people are actually, I think, geared to sort of do this sort of sitting meditation. Others are more geared towards intellectually getting to the same point. My point is, you can get there, but you're starting with the gross and going to the subtle. It is just a process. So I don't know what you think of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything. I'm listening. I think I honor, like, every, you know, there wouldn't be thousands of Shubids over 400 years.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's about everyone having a chance to find it.
Right. So I think it's all about getting past linguistic structures. And I'm now going to go to Paranjit Singh Ranavirji. But before I do that, I just want to take a minute, because he had asked a question the last time that we never got around to answering, and I reflected on that. He said, you're telling me to go inwards, you're telling me to move inwards. A, what does that mean? And B, when I go inwards, who the heck am I talking to, right? If I understand his question. And my response is precisely what is being said here. You're really talking to nobody. In fact, what you have to do is become silent. That is when you're inside, when you're completely silent from your thoughts. So you're not talking to anyone. As a matter of fact, you've got to stop talking, and you've got to stop your thoughts. Hanji Ranavirji, it's your turn. I'm sorry, I just saw your name up here.
Thank you, Virji, and let me also thank Ekunkarji for a very captivating and fascinating presentation. I have some observations. First thing is, I think my thinking aligns with your thinking, actually. Yes, I will come to that. The first 100 words, what you're talking about, I think Ravinder Viji talked about that. We are talking about attributive names. All these are names given to reflect on his attributes, basically. But the second aspect, when you talked about that, it is a tiny part of that Akal Purukh that is in us. That is what you are referring to, Naam. And then if we say that, then what's the difference between Jyot and Naam? About Jyot, Gurbani has mentioned many times, Jyot is in everybody. But if you say Naam is the same tiny aspect, a sense of that, so I need to understand from you that how do you differentiate between these two? And the second thing is, and that is to respond to Ravinder Viji's question, that we can do Kirtan, Vichar, and all these things. That's other way to connect with that Akal Purukh. My answer to that question is, when I read Gurbani, Ravinder Viji, there are very clear things. For example, in front of me, there's a citation here, Vad enkar nahi prab mela, mante pave naam suhela. All these things, what we are doing is because we are fascinated in these discussions, because as you pointed out, I remember that it's some sort of addiction, you can say that. To me, that we enjoy doing it, but these things are not going to get us where we want to go, but it is a progression. It is a process we are following. So I think Vichar, Naam is something very different than the path which our Vichar is going to take us. So I think we have to differentiate that. That's my thought on that. But coming back to the question, so what is the difference between Jyot and Naam, as you were saying?
Well, the way I would express that is that everyone has the Jyot, the divine light inside of them. But we're each of us a very different expression of that divine light, you know? So the light, because the light is the same. And that's kind of it. It's like at the base, at the root, you know, it's one light going through all of us. It's the same light that's going through every single one of us. It's the same light that every single one of us, our minds are trying to merge back into. But the Naam is like the unique identity I'm expressing, just like there's Thakur and Ram and Krishna and there's Ekonkar and, you know, Ravinder, and, you know, that we're all these little tiny expressions of the divine, and we're all unique. And so the Naam is the uniqueness of that expression, and it's creative. And this is where I think Gurbani really did something freaking awesome, because the spiritual traditions had gotten to this place of going, forget about the earth. You just want to meditate and go back home. And I think the Guru said, no, man, be in the Naam. You are a unique, creative expression of divinity. There's no one like you. You have a creative purpose, and the light is your base. Get to play as the unique identity that you are. And that's what I think the difference is between Naam and Jod.
Thank you. We have about 2 minutes left. And if I may, we've overlapped a little bit from last time's discussion with today's discussion. We will continue next week, but here's what I just want to say in closing. I talked a little bit about, and I think Ekunkarji also alluded to this. I talked about Naam being the essence of a thing. So therefore, it is subtle. And Naam is revealed, we also talked about that through Shabad, right? And then it gets negotiated through the agency of language. That's what we're really talking about. However, I think what we are discussing is that verbal, trying to denote a word, denote something by word, verbal denotations cannot suggest the experience. They cannot actually, you can't experience it, you're only suggesting an experience. Words are simply suggesting to you an experience. They cannot reveal that experience. So this process that we are going through is to get over this suggestion that we are getting and then making that quantum leap into that experience, right? So it's a process. So,
and it requires grace. And that's
another, and in Guru Nanak's philosophy, another is the sine qua non for that, right? Yeah. So with that said, much appreciated.
Thank you. I had fun doing this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm fascinated by linguistic structures myself, and I think, as a matter of fact, to the group, I would say that perhaps this is one direction we ought to explore, because I've been thinking about Haume, and I also think that is really rooted in our linguistic structure. So with that said, thank you, everybody. We will meet again next week. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.